Alright, and we're on in 3, 2, 1. This is Holographic Harley, with Harley. I'm Harley. Here we go. So in today's talk, we are going to learn how to transcend linear reality and become multidimensional. We will see, among many things, that thought is an illusory aspect of the mind, that of which holds its attachment to time, to structure, to culture, and agency. And from here, we are going to learn how to let go, as so we may become reborn and create the reality which we prefer. In the previous video on the logic of practice, we discussed structure, culture, agency, and the meta-narrative of time. Here, we will see that all of that was a project, and so now we shall transcend it. Time is a project, and a project is a fiction, or rather make-believe, of social compacts. But yet we call this fiction society and reality. Yet we call reality non-fiction. If you think about this, this is a contradiction. This means that we have been tricked to believe the fake to be real and the real to be fake. This is a classic example of double think. In a recent interview with GQ, Kanye West described the box society. He says, "In the womb, we are multidimensional, meaning all possibilities exist. But then when we are born, we are placed in a crib, which is a box. And then we are off to school, the classroom, which is another box. And eventually we are off to college, the classroom again, which is another box. And then you find work, a cubicle, a box next to many other boxes. And then you buy a home, which is a box, a house next to many houses. And then you buy yourself a casket, a coffin, $10,000, and you buy yourself a box. You live by the box, and you die by the box. So, how do we transcend this way of life? Well, first is to see and to recognize that your point of power is always and has forever been here and now. The moment never happens to you, rather you happen to the moment. And this philosophy, this brief allegory, leads us to the practice of externalizing our personal power, which simply means to let go of the things that you cannot control, because it simply does not matter. For instance, when someone says, "I'm feeling down because Trump is destroying the world, the fabric of society, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know if there's anything I can do about it." Well, when you say this, this implies that you are a victim of your environment, and this also implies that you are dependent upon your environment to free you. And this is a linear way of looking at life, for dependency is the absence of independency. And so once more, being a victim is a project, a literal mind projection from one's external surroundings projected into one's internal surroundings. And here's the secret that's kept from the masses. There are no victims. There are only those who willingly participate in the thoughts and the emotions and the energy which they put out. For what you put out is what you get back. For instance, let's say you have a desire to change and to save the world from the chaos of whatever it may be. In order to do this, you have to see that the world does not change. You change yourself. And in changing yourself, collectively, people change the world. However, you cannot change nor transcend that which you do not own. And as I said in the last video, to see this, you must return to the source of that which you came from, which is home. For only then will you truly know what it means to know yourself, to trust yourself, and to be yourself. For the world is a reflection of us, and we are the world, and the world is us. And so externalizing your personal power is a lot like Neo, how Neo stopped the bullets in the Matrix. He put his hand out and basically just said no. And so, if enough people do this, participate in this philosophy, it can literally shift our perception into a new reality, wherein the ways of the old, the demands of structure and culture, no longer exist. For the internal world creates the external world, not the other way around, like we're taught. And now this leads us to perception. How does perception work? Well, for me, perception is behavior, and behavior is a lot like a computer program. When you see a Google icon that is red, yellow, and green, does that mean that the software is also red, yellow, and green? No, there's much more to it than that. And so again, think of time, structure, culture, and agency. Once the collective of humanity, which is culture, psychologically downloads, which is to accept the perception of clocks and time, the structure, this becomes a software of mirroring subconscious routine and behavior, and the acts of the self, the acts of the habitus, and this creates the social program of time, the label of the ego. And so when you see this, when you live by this program, meaning can only be created by dragging the past into the present, and dragging the present into the future. And for even with Bourdieu, you can apply this model to almost any culture on the planet, and you can see this. Now, this leads us to how do we create a new perception? How do we create new meaning and new value for life? So, how do we create new meaning and new values in life? For me, my personal experience started with Friedrich Nietzsche and the Übermensch, the idea that the self creates their own meanings and values, to see that life has no intrinsic, no inherent meaning. And so there is no reality other than the reality which you prefer. And we must be open to this idea. To be open to this idea, we must be willing to replace all socially ascribed definitions with the definitions which we prefer. For instance, to surrender. Socially and inherently, intrinsically, the idea of surrender means to give up and to give in to the powers that be. But for me, I gave it a new definition of to surrender means to let go of the control which society has programmed into me. For once you change your relationship with language, the idea of inherent meanings completely dissolve. For instance, in my last semester at Virginia Tech, I was in an acting class, which I received a B- in. I'm still very salty about that one, but I do digress. But in acting on the stage, in the theater, we had 3 black boxes, and these boxes were props, which we could use to act with. During the performance, the actor had to assign meaning to the props, to the 3 black boxes. And so during the play, I had to give it meaning. But outside of the play, or rather watching someone else's performance, they were all merely black boxes. They were meaningless. And so life is meaningless other than the meaning you give it. And so the example of what this means is to redefine and recreate the reality which you prefer. We should all be the author of our literature, for our presence, being here, being present, is a present. And once we let go of that which no longer serves us, we will see again that our thoughts create our reality. And if we give in to the ways of the old, of the ways of the world happening to us, we will shift our awareness onto that. But if we let go of it, we can shift our awareness onto what we prefer. And this is what's called being conscious of your subconscious. As you awaken, this occurs because the mind is releasing old thought patterns to make way for new neural pathways. As your mind is rewiring itself, don't run away from the thoughts that are going to be bombarding you. Simply watch them. Watch your thoughts. Watch them spin out like a vinyl. And do this for 3 weeks, just 3 weeks. Try it out. And eventually, your mind will become still. And in the stillness, your presence will say hello. And you will feel this energy in your heart before your mind. And your heart will become in coherence with your mind. Now, as your heart and your mind are resonating with each other, your presence, the essence of your soul, you will experience a nothingness of no mind, no thought, no locality, no reality. You will truly lose and dissolve the ego, because the ego needs to hold on to time. But when you have no locality, nothing to hold on to, your subconscious then releases itself and you become aware. And in this moment, you will see what it truly means to create a new reality, because from nothing comes everything, and that is God. All possibilities exist in the stillness of presence, and this is what multidimensionality means. When you put your ego in the back seat, just for a moment, you put your ego in the back seat and see it as a vessel to express your soul. You control your ego, and your ego no longer controls you, for the ego is a tool. And when you do this, you shall transcend the limitations of the matrix. You shall transcend structure, culture, agency, old thought patterns. And in this presence, the presence of the now, you become supernatural. To me, I found that this is because the kingdom of God resides within the presence of the now. One of the greatest tricks they have ever pulled on us in the history of history is the idea of heaven, that the kingdom of God is found somewhere outside of us. No. This is false. This is the false reality that the masses live by. The kingdom of God is found within the presence of the now. And so before I go, just take a deep breath, relax your eyes, breathe, and just be. Watch your thoughts spin out for 3 weeks. Let your mind become still. Let go, let God, so you can allow yourself to experience the reality which you prefer, because you are deserving of that reality. Every soul is. Until next time, be well.